Just want to start with a couple words in Spanish for parents or niños or family members who don't speak much English. Quiero decir que es una gran celebración este día. Está enfocado principalmente en inglés porque es por los niños y ellos entienden mucho, se entienden español, pero entienden mucho más inglés porque está entrenado en la escuela en inglés. Entonces quiero decir solamente bienvenidos a todos y espero que todos puedan participar el más que pueden personalmente y en la comunidad, que podemos hacer una celebración muy tremenda, muy bonito por los niños. There's a movie that was made many years ago principally for people like you in religious education. It's called Grandpa Doc. It's a favorite of mine, and I haven't seen it in years. But Grandpa Doc was a doctor, and he's in this movie. He's about 75 or 80 years old. He's a wonderful man, big, tall man. He's got this gruff voice, but he's just gentle as a lamb. He's got all these grandkids, and among the grandkids, there's these cousins, and a couple of them are bullies, and they're bullies to this little boy named Greg, who shows that he has a talent as an artist. And his grandpa sees the talent in all the little things that he does. Even at the beach, he's making sandcastles, beautiful ones. And so he decides in this movie that he's going to put him in art school so that he can develop these gifts, and he, in the movie, becomes an artist, a very good artist. But there's this one scene in the movie. He's about 10 years old, I guess, and he's under the house. There's like a space between the ground and the house is built up. And he's doing a puppet show, and he's carrying on this conversation with these puppets. And Grandpa Doc sees him but doesn't say anything. So later that night, he has a conversation. He says, "Hey, Greg," he says, what's that puppet show about that you were doing? And he says, well, it's about this Martian who comes down to the earth, and this Martian disguises himself as a steak. And then this dog eats the steak, who's really the Martian, but it looks like a piece of steak. And then when the steak is inside the stomach of the dog, it turns back into the Martian. And then the Martian is inside the dog, jumping around. And so the Grandpa Doc says, "Wow, sounds a little complicated." I thought of this story because I think the Eucharist can be a little complicated, because it's not like this story. It's not about Jesus coming down into a piece of bread and walking around inside the bread, but we don't see him because we just see the bread. Then we eat the bread and he turns back into Jesus. That's not what it is. Jesus instead gave us something amazing in a way to remember him, so that in the memory and in the celebration of the memory, he comes alive in us, not physically, but spiritually. Now, spiritual means this. There's only two parts of the human person that I can think of that are not physical. Because even if I do this, I don't want to gross anyone out, but watch my finger go, and I put a little teeny piece of spittle. Can I see it? No. But if I bring a microscope over here, what am I going to see? What? Pardon? But, I won't see saliva. That's a kind of liquid. But what? Well, a microscope magnifies things. What will be under the microscope? What is the smallest? Yes. Bacteria. There'll be a lot of little creatures in there. Bacteria. They're microscopic. What else? Atoms. What's a little bigger than atoms? DNA. Oh, my goodness. Very good. It starts with a C. This is what... cells. Okay, there's thousands, I don't know, maybe millions. But they're material. And if you collect enough of them, you can actually see something. But spiritual, you cannot see. Spiritual, you can't put it under a microscope because it's not material. There's only two things I can think of in the human person that are spiritual, that are not physical or material. What are the two things that are spiritual? Spiritual. I'll tell you what. Go ahead. No. I'm not talking religious stuff. This is just in everybody. What is spiritual? It's not physical or material. Let me give you a hint. I have a whole bunch of them somewhere in me right now. And the reason I'm talking about these things. What are they? What? Somebody else said it. Thoughts. My thoughts. All my thoughts, how have I shared them with you? In what way? How do you know what I'm thinking? How do you know what? I'm telling you through words. So if I want to talk about Jesus, I said it, but you don't know what I'm thinking until I say words. So my spiritual thoughts come out in words, but they're not material. The other one is feelings. And let me tell you, feelings, your spiritual feelings are with you every single day. That's why bullies are bullies. Bullies are ugly bullies because they have all this anger and stuff in them and they want to boss people around. And then the people they boss around get hurt. And those feelings is a response to this. So feelings and thoughts, they're alive deep in our spirit. And Jesus knew that. So he wanted to gather right there. It's a really important part. Now let me shift. When I grew up in a family that we celebrated all of our birthdays. There were 6 children. But my dad would always say this. When I'd go to him on my birthday, I'd say, "Dad, it's my birthday today." And he'd always say this, "Just another day. Just another day." Now, my mom always made a birthday cake. We didn't make a big thing out of it, but we had a birthday cake. And when I went into the seminary to become a priest, I met a lot of people who really celebrated their birthdays. And by the time I became a priest, my birthday wasn't one day, it's a month. And sometimes it's 2 months. Now, I'm going to betray a friend here. That friend of mine playing the piano, Joe, and what he said before he met me, he kind of grew up like me, Did your dad ever say it's just another day? In effect, huh? He didn't mention much. But after Joe met me and he saw how I celebrated my birthday for a month, he started doing it now. His birthday's in October. He named the month of October now Joe-tober. He celebrates for a month, Joe-tober month. This is the point. When we celebrate, when we create special words and special actions and special decoration and special prayers around something that we feel deep in our spirit, it comes alive in a real powerful way. So Jesus, on the night before he died, he knew that he wanted his disciples to have him, like the gospel said, alive inside them, alive, have meaning. So he created a celebration that would bring him spiritually present, spiritually, not physically. And he said, "Take this bread," like in the first reading, "and this is my body, eat it. This is my blood, drink it. Whenever you do this in memory of me." Why? So that we could come together as Catholic Christians who believe in Jesus Christ, remembering his death on the cross, his resurrection, the pouring out of his Spirit, and every week, we say once a week, 1 hour out of, I think it's 178 hours a week, something like that. 1 hour that we gather to celebrate Jesus Christ, to remember him, and allow him to be present, and not just be present abstractly, but we actually eat and drink his presence in the Eucharist. It's not magical, but so that we can bring into our body and into our spirit the presence of Jesus Christ. But you know what we have to do? We have to do more than just receive communion. We have to become real friends of Jesus Christ. We have to know what he said, what he taught, how he lived. The reason we always have in churches and many people around their neck a cross is because this perhaps is one of the most powerful ways, one of the most powerful examples of Jesus Christ in our lives, because he taught us always to forgive one another. We'll say it in the Our Father later on in the Mass, and Father, forgive us our trespasses. You forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. He always talked about forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. So when he died on the cross, he's hanging there after he has been spit on and stripped and beaten and made fun of and bullied and rejected and made to carry the cross and then nailed to it, then lifted up to die on it. And as he's dying, people are laughing at him and rejecting him more, and he says these words, Father, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now that's an example to follow. Do we want to go through life hating or forgiving? And Jesus says, I tell you, this one gives you life. So we come here every week, and this is your first communion. I hope in 20 years you'll say, it's my 7,486th communion today. Not that you'll be counting, but if you did, to say, I keep coming back. Because these are my brothers and sisters. We believe in the Lord Jesus. And we want to follow Him and love Him and let His life grow stronger inside of us. So today, boys and girls, that's why we make such a big thing out of this first communion. Such a big thing. This is like Jotober, or this is like create the biggest event we can. You prepare for 2 years so that when you get here and you experience this, you walk away never forgetting this day, but saying, you know, this wasn't the end of 2 years. This is the beginning of something I'll do for the rest of my life. Do you know, when I go to the hospital and people are dying, and if they don't have tubes in their mouth, and if they're able to swallow, let me tell you, when they receive communion for the last time, they really make a connection. This is Jesus the Christ, my Lord. And He's given me Himself to eat, in this case not drink, but to eat, so that I can experience Him deep within me, so that I know, just like what I've eaten, I know I've taken into my soul and spirit, for Him to love me here, love me, and be in me and I in Him. That is what we celebrate today, and we hope that this first time will be so memorable, but it will be the beginning of so many more memorable times to come. Please stand.